It's the weekly, it's the Blue Room, it's me, Dave, it's Pete, and it's Les. And it's the first one we've had post-match from Everton's first game against Fulham on Saturday, which is obviously, we all know, 1-0 defeat at home, which is, I think, knocked most of us down, well, to a certain extent, given the performance that we had against Fulham, the way in which the team lined up, the way in which Sean Dyche used the players that he had on the bench. I want to come to you first on this, Les. Because the pair of you, actually, it's a good podcast to have, because you guys didn't do the post match with us, did you? So firstly, want to get your thoughts on that game. Um, how did you find it, Les? Did you look at it and think, well, we badly need that many more players, that this couldn't possibly end up as a decent game? Because that's the feeling I got every time this happens every year, most years, I look at games like that and I think they just haven't got enough here, so I'm not expecting us to get a result. Did you get that feeling when you saw the team being
Um,
announced and when it came out?
it wasn't the most inspiring lineup, was it? But there wasn't really much else it could have been. I mean, I don't know if Danjuma was like had a slight injury, so we could only start from the bench. But then I don't really understand that. If that was the case, I don't know if Calvert-Lewin was available at all. Um, I don't know. It was going into that game. I think we pretty much knew the starting lineup was going to be something like that. I know we sort of said in the week it'd be nice to see Brantwaite in there, but again, he probably wouldn't have made too much difference to that game. I don't think.
Mm.
I think there was. It's hard to be too down about it. It's frustrating because it's a bit like the Chelsea game last year. That's a game we should be looking at winning at home,
Yeah.
especially opening season. That's a nice game to sort of go into the season with, sort of upper mid-table team like Fulham at home, 3 o'clock Saturday, perfect. But there was just that missing thing, wasn't there, from the team? I don't know, the the ground felt a bit flat, maybe. The atmosphere wasn't brilliant for an opening day. And yeah, and that could come down to just the pervading feeling around the club. I mean, I don't know if you saw that thing that was knocking around on Twitter about the sort of satisfaction with how your club's being run. I think Everton was a massive 8%. I would love to know who that 8% was, because we haven't even got a fight for it.
I'd like to know the 8%, and I prefer that
Yeah.
we weren't going to any games.
But yeah, I think there is just that there was nothing in that squad, was there, to think, oh yeah, there we go, we've got a chance here. Um, but having said that, it's hard to be too down about it, because I thought we played all right. We created a lot of chances, we just couldn't finish them. Now that's better than going in like the game against Fulham last season, where I think we created about 2 or 3 good chances before half time and then got walloped in the second half. Um, I think there was enough there to build on. With the right players coming in. Jack Harrison,
Mm.
spoke to a couple of Leeds fans about him. Sounds like he'd be a really good addition. Works hard, decent player, good shot, good final ball on him. Sounds like he's the sort of player we can get behind. Obviously, we're not going to see him until September. But yeah, I think it was frustration more than anything. That it was a very winnable game, that, and it looks like we're going to go down the same road as we did last August, which was almost catastrophic come May, in the fact that we're going to leave all the business till late on now, when 3 or 4 games will have passed. So I'm really mixed about it. It was disappointing to get beat. Disappointing we didn't get anything out of the game. I can't be too disheartened because the performance wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I completely agree with that side of it. It's hard to define what your thoughts are from that sort of game, because you like the caveat that's always in your mind is that it's an opening day of season game. People are generally going to start rusty, regardless of how much pre-season you do, regardless of how much physical training you do. It's still it's still a different game. It's still different than what you've had for 3 months, isn't it?
Mm.
And now I think people were looking at it, and I certainly was anyway. What Les has referred to there in terms of creating chances. The stat that I looked at on one of those Opta stats about like the percentages they put up in the amount of chances you create in a game. Apparently, and this isn't verbatim, but apparently we created as much 20 point whatever, the XG stuff. It was like 2.93, and that apparently that is the most chances, or the highest of that that piece of information, the highest that it's been in a player in a team that hasn't scored a goal in like the whole of last season. I think it was. Now
It was Matt Cheatham's stat, wasn't it? I think.
yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, it was Matt Cheatham.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to give him
I
credit.
think
That's
all
what.
last season.
Yeah, that
No,
have I said that right there, Les? What that actually
yeah,
was?
so no one had, I think the XG, I think you're right, it's about 2.93, something like that. And no one had an XG that high without scoring for the whole of last season.
Now
I mean,
that's
you know what? In one way, it highlights what we all already know. And the thing for me is that should be kicking the club's arse into just doing something this week before Villa. As Tyrone Mings, did he get injured on Sunday? He did, didn't he?
yeah, it was a really serious injury, wasn't it? Away at Newcastle.
Down at the back, but you know, lucky for them, we got no forwards, so it probably doesn't matter. It's annoying, isn't it? It's like, you know, Villa, this could, if they're a bit short at the back, that's a game we think, do you know what? Beat Villa, go 10th, something like that. But
yeah, they seem to be the team to always refer that to, don't they? I mean, the thing is, Peter, what Les has said there, and what we've just both spoken about in terms of chances created. Again, it's something that's sort of twofold, isn't it? I mean, you look at it and think, fucking hell, we've got nobody who creates chances. We know about the striker issue and all that. But then to create chances but not score them, does that feel to you like it's a positive step, or does it feel more frustrating that we can't fucking put them in?
Oh, it's absolutely positive. A positive thing for me. I mean, when you look back to last season, I mean, I don't go into all that XG, all that sort of stuff. It's not my bag, to be honest with you. But you know, I'm sure there's something in it. But yeah, looking back to next season, the amount of times that we went into games and weren't creating any kind of chances, certainly towards, you know, when things really got bad, we were going into games and creating one or two chances at best. I thought on Saturday it was a marked improvement from us. The most frustrating thing as well is that Fulham scored at a time when I felt that we were at our most threatening as well. Danjuma had just come on, and like Les says, the crowd was a little bit up and down on Saturday. I actually felt the crowd was probably at its peak just before Fulham scored. But
yeah,
it's the hope that kills you. So it was the timing of the goal as much as anything else, because I just felt that if it, you know, that pressure that we were putting on them, we brought Danjuma on to hopefully finish them off. You know, we've been banging at the door for so long. We had that ridiculous decision in the first half to disallow the Michael Keane goal, and then we'd hit the bar with Patterson. Tarkovsky had that header as well. I mean, the chances that we were creating as well. That's not before we talk about Neil Lorpay. The chances that we creating were just like little half chances. These are really good chances. Decore going through one-on-one. You know, these are really, really good chances. And I look at it and think, well, obviously I'm disappointed. I'm disheartened that we didn't have anyone who could put the ball in the back of the net. But at the same time, I'm looking at it thinking, if we can get that business done, if we can bring someone through, if we can get Danjuma fit, if we can somehow get Dom fit, it gave me a lot of optimism. It sounds like a really strange thing to go, you know, come out of the first game of the season, having been beat at home. But actually, it kind of gave me a bit more optimism, because what I didn't want to see was going into that game was coming out of it thinking, oh my, we look so flat, we look so stale. The players look like they didn't have a clue. We didn't look organised. I actually did think that we looked very well organised. I thought that we created so many chances, and at the end of the day, you know, that it's the key in football, as we all know, is to score goals. So hopefully, either the players that we've got in the squad who've got that ability can get themselves fit, or we can bring in some reinforcements. Another thing as well is that if you're trying to tempt a striker to come to Everton, if you show them all them chances that were there on a plate for them on Saturday, there'll be a few licking the lips thinking, yeah, go on, I'll have a little bit of that.
I think that's been like the surprising thing for me. I think since Dyche has been in, that our chances created has gone right up on it. It's like, you know, we're looking like a team who's trying to score. We've just got no one to stick it away, which I thought it'd be the other way around. I thought we'd be dead defensive and just like, you know, really snap. But well, basically play like Fulham did at the weekend, which isn't, you know, nothing disparaging to them, because that's like a perfect away display.
Yeah.
But I thought we'd be more like that. But you know, we've kind of gone for it, and we are creating a lot of chances since he's been there. So again, just reaffirms the need to get a frigging striker in, doesn't it?
The one of the big things we spoke about in the post-match that I'm keen to get your thoughts for, lads, is the midfield setup. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit about the general setup that he's put in there with Danjuma not starting when I think most Evertonians, even all Evertonians, would want him to start. Give everyone a boost on the opening day if you do something like that. One of the very few players that we've signed is going to be playing first game at home. That gives everyone a kick up the backside, doesn't it? But with the midfield area, before I ask you how you think they played, because I think I've got an opinion on that that's probably quite different to everybody else. But what did you make of the way the midfield set up there? Because the interesting chat that I had about this, or the one that stuck to the top of my mind, was James Garner, who I think he's built, and perhaps we haven't seen the full best of him, but certainly in the stages that he did play, I know he had a few injuries last season. He's, in my mind, I think he's one of our best players midfield-wise. I think he's almost a victim of his own success in that he can play in a variety of areas. Because you think about that Bournemouth game, and we played him right back. He's probably man of the match playing at right back, wasn't he? Where he was started by Dyche seemed to be just in front of our right back. You know, he kept on leaning out to the right-hand side, which obviously wasn't the peak part of his game. That's what he obviously used to do a job there. But you look at a player like that and you desperately want him inside the midfield. So the first thing I put on Twitter after the game is I thought he was head and shoulders above everyone else. And so many replied to me saying, nah, he's shite, lads. You need to sort your head out. He's not any good at all. Typical Everton-style arguments, like. But with you first, Les, aside from talking about him first, but midfield-wise, what did you make of that setup?
I thought it was what I expected, to be honest. I didn't expect Garner to be out wide, I don't think. I'm trying to work out what I thought it would have been, actually. I don't know. It didn't really. I thought Onana was in and out of the game very, very patchy.
Yeah.
You know, I was hoping for a bit more from him. I thought, like, you know, last season I could expect that. You know, first sort of 6 months in the club and in England, but I was hoping for a bit more yesterday, especially, you know, against Fulham, as I said, like an upper mid-table team, not really pulling up any trees. Should have been a game he was looking to dominate really in that midfield.
Yeah.
I thought Garner was wasted out wide. To be honest as well, I thought Patterson had a bit of a stinker. I would have taken him off and stuck Garner right back instead of taking Garner off.
What's on that? Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because he kept on the one hand saying Garner's wasted sort of playing out wide right, but then I'd happily play him at right back, which seems like a bigger waste, but it isn't, because I think he's more suited to that position. I didn't think it was quite right. The balance wasn't there. Obviously missing Dwight McNeil, weren't they? That would have been a Iwobi over there, I guess. With Dwight McNeil on the left, which adds a much better balance.
Yeah, I think just on that, sorry to interrupt, Liz, I think when McNeil gets back in there, him and Ashley Young on that left hand side, I think that's really profitable for us, I reckon, because I don't think Ashley Young did anything wrong really, apart from, ironically, when they scored, he was involved in that, wasn't he, when they were coming down their right hand side. But I think you've got McNeil in there. There's competition between him and Iwobi, if that's what Dyche sees it like, as Iwobi started in front of Ashley Young. But yeah, I think you're spot on there that with him getting back in there, that'll be a massive boost for us on that side.
Yeah. Just quickly, one thing as well on the disallowed goal that Pete mentioned. I saw a lot of people saying it was handball by Tarkowski, but that's not the rule anymore. The accidental handball that went out season before last, as far as I know. So even though it looked like it may have hit his hand once the keeper had dropped it, that accidental handball thing doesn't count now. Where, remember like that one season where it was like, if it brushed your arm and it was completely accidental and then your team scored, it was disallowed. That's not the rule anymore.
No.
So that goal still should have stood.
Do you know what? The most disgusting thing about that as well was what happened with Wolves the other night.
Oh, that was appalling, wasn't it?
But that sticks it up a lot more in your mind, doesn't it? What happened there? We didn't score a goal when Keane taps it in. That should have been a goal. And to put it further into the mire, you've got Mike Dean saying the exact same thing. Mike, you're agreeing with Mike Dean. How bad's that, by the
way? Unforgivable.
But the thing is, though, this is exactly what VAR was brought in to do.
Yeah. Shocking.
And
Yeah.
that one doesn't even get referred.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. Sorry,
That
anyway.
really is. No, it's all right, mate. No doubt that'll be a consistent thing we talk about this season is when all that shit happens to us, and inevitably it will happen to us, stuff like that, won't it? Just on that midfield with you, Pete. I'm just looking at the way it was set up because I didn't necessarily think this was always the case here, given with Decore essentially supposed to be playing as a 10. I didn't think he was as effective as he could have been if he was even slightly a bit deeper and then charging forward when we had the ball on the break and whatnot. I don't think he's a player you can put in as a 10 where you're just sort of playing it into him and then playing off him. I don't think he's that well. That's certainly not his best sort of attribute that he's got. But then, when you look at it, it's an essentially four-man midfield that we started with. Garner right side, just a Gay, Onana, and Iwobi. I'm not sure there's many who would have gone with that. And by that, I mean a flat back four. Because normally you'd have just a Gay, then a three midfield, or even, you'd have the core there anyway. And maybe Garner or maybe Iwobi, who you put as a 10 behind Mope or whoever we've got in front.
Yeah, I thought in particular with Decore, one of the things that he does offer when he's slightly further forward, it's not necessarily when we're in possession, it's when we're out of possession. Because where you want him to be pressing, especially with a team like Fulham who play the ball out short from the back, Decore, if you saw him again, Neil Maupay, I actually thought did a decent job at this as well. Our press was spot on for 99% of the game in terms of nullifying Fulham's ability to be able to play it out from the back. So I think that's why he went with Decore slightly further forward. The problem with Decore going slightly further forward, we saw when he had that one-on-one chance. I always feel with Decore that he's at his best when he doesn't have time to think. When he does things on instinct, like we saw against Bournemouth in the last game of last season, he can smash one in from the edge of the box. We saw it against Brighton with 2 first-time finishes. Then that's when he's at his best. When he's at his worst for me is when he's got time to think, because he's not the most gifted of footballers in terms of being in possession of a football. Doesn't have a great passing range. His decision making can, as I say, he can trip over himself in terms of his decision making sometimes. So I think, in terms of what we were trying to do, it wasn't necessarily just about what we did in possession. It was what we did out of possession. To have Iwobi on that left as well with Ashley Young. Again, one thing that Iwobi did do well for Young for a large part of the game was that he gave the freedom for Young to get forward down our left-hand side to overlap, because Iwobi is actually very good he's very good in tight situations to play the 1-2 with, but also he's very good at tracking back and being able to sort of help his man out. So when Ashley Young was going beyond him, Iwobi had the intelligence to stick in behind, and I think that's what he was hoping for with James Garner as well, to allow Patterson to get forward. Unfortunately, that was part of how they scored as well, was that the player was left free on the back post when the ball came across, and James Garner was a couple of yards behind them. But I think in general, the midfield, one of the things for me, Amadou Onana, for me, I thought the first half he played 2 balls out, one in particular where he actually absolutely pings it out to the left hand side, and it's an absolute beauty. And I was right on line with it as well. Diagonal pass, pinged it along the ground, put his laces right through it, and it was an absolute world class, ball. But it's too few and far between for me that we see those moments from. I know he's only young, and I know I've no doubt, he'll improve and he'll start to stamp his authority on games. But I'm really hoping that if he does stay, I know he's been linked with a move away this week. I'm really hoping that this season he can improve in that area and start really stamping his authority. A bit like the way that, it's probably a lazy comparison, but Marouane Fellaini took a while to get going at Everton. With his size, we expected him to dominate midfield, and it really took him quite a long time to show those types of performances. I think Amadou Onana has got everything in his locker to potentially do that, but we do need to see him step up. This is why I'm kind of torn when it comes to, he's been linked with a move away. On one hand, you think, well, if it's good money, is it a good time to get some money in and get some reinforcements in? Can we reinvest that money? But on the flip side, he's a potential £100 million player in my eyes. Although we haven't necessarily seen that full potential yet, I do think that there is a player in there. And I hope that he sort of becomes that player while he's still playing for us. But yeah, another thing, on the midfield, that was slightly frustrating is that I think Fulham kind of got onto us towards, in the second half, and we found it harder and harder to get our midfielders onto the ball and get our midfielders in possession to be able to try and dictate play. And that's the type of game that I think that James Garner, when he long term, when he does settle back into that centre of midfield, I feel that is probably where we'll see the best of him, because he is a player who constantly wants the ball. He's got a great passing range, and I think that is where the position where we'll see the best out of James Garner.
On Onana, with that many Arnas at the end, haven't we? On Onana, Les, there's been plenty of talk about him being linked. Well, he has been linked with a lot of other clubs. The fee is something that has got everybody talking about. That, if we're going to sell him, he needs to go for a certain amount of money that each person has a difference in what they think he's worth. The other thing that is worrying with that is that we owe Leo 20% of whatever he does go with, isn't it? I think that's right. What would you think? Well, firstly, I think, what do you think of him in general and his time at Everton? And I'll start with mine, actually, and this will be controversial because I've not seen the hype, or I don't see the hype that people have seen in that lad. I've seen it in a really small amount of games. I've seen him in games that he's not. I've not looked at him in an Everton game and thought he's man of the match him. And I know that's difficult to say, and it's difficult to criticise on him given the age that he's at. Attribute wise, absolutely, he's got everything. And like Pete says there, he's likely to go on and be a player, and probably sadly won't be for us when he hits his peak, or unless we do a miracle and end up in ninth or something. that he's the player that that he looks like he potentially is going to be. If someone, hypothetically, if somebody come along and said, we'll give you 60 million for him, which allegedly is what Manchester United are looking at paying for him if they want him, would you accept that? What's that less out than what's 20% off there? 12, you're just getting over 40-odd% for it, 40-odd million for him then. What do you think of him, and what do you think about getting rid of him?
I think it's all the potential he's got, isn't it? Because as you said, the attributes are all there. I mean, I think we've only seen it very fleetingly. I can only think of one occasion where he looked like a box-to-box, where he'd get the ball and he'd be up the pitch in about 3 strides. And that sort of player, if you can get them doing that consistently, it is priceless, because it gives you that other out ball, doesn't it? If the long ball isn't on, give it to him, he'll be up the pitch in no time. So I think it's all potential with me, but we're not in a position to just like wait for someone to fulfill the potential.
I think
and
that's what you're saying there. We're in that situation where we're not in a position to get rid of him, given the midfielders we've got as an alternative. We're not in a position to get rid of him, given we're in position to get rid of him. We have to, given the amount of money that we need.
That's the other side of it, isn't it? I think it's too late now. I think that even if we got 80 million for him, because if I was Everton and United were serious, you'd have to be pushing the price up, given what Chelsea have done in the transfer market. I know it doesn't quite work like that, but if prices are getting inflated all over the shop, Liverpool are getting rid of midfielders they wouldn't have been able to get off the books in normal circumstances, and getting 30-40 million for them. I think 60 million for him is a bit of an insult, isn't it? But the worry for me is, even if we've got 80-100 million for him now, it'd be too late. I couldn't see that money getting reinvested, and certainly not reinvested wisely, because I don't know. We just don't work like that, do we?
Not in the next 15 days we've got.
Exactly. Yeah, you feel it'd come like a little bit of a surprise to the club to be caught flat-footed, thinking, "Oh Christ, what are we going to do?" Well,
you frankly wouldn't trust them if it was given when the window opens, would you?
That's making the massive assumption that money would go back into the team anyway. So I don't know. I think we'd be better off keeping him, in all honesty, just because the money either wouldn't get used at all or would not get used well. And I think he's more valuable to us than 100 million sitting in the bank till January.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, because, like I said to you, it's twofold, isn't it? That you can't trust Everton to spend any amount of money that we get for any player that's been sold.
No,
and I don't know if that's obviously it's a shame that that's the case, but then if that wasn't the case, that they actually could do that, then you've got a proper dilemma, haven't you? But right now you've got to keep a player there who's obviously he's gonna start every game in midfield because we don't really have much of an alternative to go in there. And we mentioned Danjuma. We mentioned him a couple of times in this. Does he come back in and start? Does he come in and start against Aston Villa, do you think, or is this going to be, we can't even think about going into there after the pitch, given the squad that they've got, and I think a lot of us, we would when we did the predictions for this season, I put them in as a top 4 side. I think Aston Villa are going to do brilliantly this season. Hard to say that now. They've just been battered 5-1 by Newcastle, but when you look at this going into Villa away, first of all, I think most of us here would absolutely take a point now if it was offered to you. The way we line this up is going to be the difficult thing, I think, for Dyche here, Pete, because it doesn't look like, well, certainly Calvert-Lewin's not going to be fit. The only, well, aside from the kids we got in Dublin and whatnot, the only player we're going to put up there you would think would be Mopé again. You do that, you're automatically struggling to go goals, aren't you? So going there, I can only see us playing a lot deeper, certainly a lot deeper than we did against Fulham. And then you're trusting on, the 9 players behind Mopé to win the ball and get up the pitch and help him out. Do you think it's the time that you put Danjuma into the team?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because you'd think that,
or would you start him up front? Do you know? Could you? Because he's got that attribute. He's that versatile. He could start up front. Would you just even think about doing that?
I personally, if he's not 100% fit, I wouldn't start him. Because I think that he can make an impact coming off the bench, certainly until he gets himself to full fitness. One thing I would say, going back to sort of the options that we've got there, obviously Neil Maupay for me, and this is going to be controversial. I'll probably get all kinds for this, but Neil Maupay on another day could have had a hat-trick on Saturday. I look at Neil Maupay and just think, surely at some point one of these has got to go in. Surely at some point, even if he falls over and it goes in off his arse, it's got to go in at some point. I felt for the lad on Saturday, I really did, because I felt that he got himself in really good positions. Again, he just looks like a rabbit in the headlights anytime he gets a chance. It's you can tell that the weight of the world is on his shoulders, and he's just looks so nervous. And maybe he just needs that little bit of luck, a little bit of a deflected goal, something to go his way. And it might just kick him on a little bit. But I don't think that we'll see mad changes. I think he'll probably go with the same starting 11 just because of fitness. I think Danjuma, if you start him, the game's going to be, I think Dyche will go into it with the game plan of keeping it tight and trying to hit them on the break. Do you really, do you want to waste that sort of opportunity early on in the game? Whereas when Villa are getting a bit tired and the game's a bit more stretched later on, Danjuma is probably in a prime position then to be able to exploit that. Certainly, if we can keep it tight, Villa will get more and more desperate to try and get that winner for the home crowd. So it'll create more pockets of space to hit them on the counter. I just think that he'll go for, well, say tried and tested. I think he'll go with the same 11 myself. Might be wrong, obviously, but I just have a feeling that we'll go for the same 11, and then hopefully bring Danjuma on to try and finish the job. Yeah. Obviously, it's a big loss for Aston Villa with Tyrone Mings, but they've got a lot of very good attacking options as well. Villa, they shouldn't be underestimated in any way, shape, or form. That opening game defeat against Newcastle doesn't change anything.
It's one of the sides they're competing with, isn't it? To get, yeah. I don't know. You probably are saying top 4 because that's exactly what Newcastle did last season, isn't it? Yeah. Les, we've only got a few minutes left here. Your thoughts on there? What Pete was saying, team wise? Because just before you do that, I want to just do a small little chat on the. Obviously, Jack Harrison, who we've signed, but also a link with Notto, aren't we, from Leeds as well. But just give us a quick thought on what Pete said there.
Yeah, I think Pete's right. I think he will go with the same lineup, and we'll all feel a little bit flat about it. I've got the same sympathy with Mopé, to be honest. I don't, he had a few good chances, as Pete said. He got into the positions, but I don't think his misses were by any stretch the worst. I think Patterson should have buried us, to hit the bar from there, take some day. Yeah, it's frustrating, but I think I think what he does relatively well is he does the link-up play before he gets in the box. I think he does some decent link-up play with the wide players. We just need someone in the box to get on the end of it because it's not him.
That's an excellent way of putting it. Just a quick one then. Les first got Jack Harrison, which we sort of mentioned at the start. I think that's for once from the club. It's a really clever loan that we've got in there with an option to buy at the end of it. I think that's something what normal football clubs do when you've got a player like that. And he, from what I've ever seen of him and what we've heard from him as well, with the great piece that Matt's done with Phil Hay, that you want to get a listen of if you haven't already. This sounds like a player that's going to boost us a hell of a lot.
Yeah, he does. As I said earlier, he sounds like the sort of player that we'll all definitely get behind because he'll work hard and he's got an end product. I think his stats were put up against I think our player stats for the last 3 seasons or something, or it might have been last season, but Richarlison was still in there or something like that anyway. But he was head and shoulders above all of our players. Chances created, shots on goal, everything. So yeah, I think he will be a really good player for us.
Yeah.
I've done a good deal there, despite all the messing about on Sunday afternoon. It sounded like reality was never in doubt by the sound of it. Come to us. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing him. On the Gnonto one, is he? I don't really know much about him. Is he any good? I know he started well last year, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's light and quick. He's one of those players that has immense balance every time he's on the ball. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, you see a player, if they're sprinting in one direction, like they've got to take a couple more steps to go back on the other side of it. He's that type who's really intelligent with his feet and gets back into a position. He's really, really quick as well. Be interesting to see what position we played him in if we were to get him. But quick beat, your take on Jack.
Yeah, Harrison
Jack, like he's our best mate already.
Jack, yeah. No, I'm absolutely made up with him. I think he's exactly the type of player we should be going after. Someone who's young, someone who obviously is hungry to carry on developing and proving himself. We've got him on loan with the option to buy, which gives us a season to assess whether it's worth taking that option up. I think we, probably will, as long as he gets fit and firing. I think it's a cracking signing. Gnonto as well, another player with the types of characteristics that we need in terms of his pace and in terms of he's such an attacking threat. He's very direct. I remember when we played against him at Goodison, I thought he was one of their standout performers. Gnonto, that game where Coleman scored from God knows where, that really tight angle. I thought that Gnonto was probably their best player on that day. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what else we can pull out the bag from now till the end of the window. But Harrison, certainly for me, absolutely, that's a top sign, and I'm really happy with him.
Spot on. We'll leave it there, lads. It's the first weekly, like I said, after the start of the season. Matt's done some fantastic work today on Jack Harrison, and he's done the transfer pod with Mike Greenall as well. So there's loads of stuff to listen to there. And on Patreon, I'll be doing the subs weekly tomorrow. That's Thursday night to anyone who's listened to this beyond Wednesday night. But as always, great to talk to Les, great to talk to Pete. And yeah, the season's full and back, and we'll be talking all the time, most days of every single week. Do stick with us and up the toffees.